for good afternoon. Thanks, Karen, for welcoming me. It's always such a pleasure to work with you all. I'm just excited to be here. Our topic today, of course, is music making and listening, what Fred Rogers can teach us. And I would love it if you could find a couple of things nearby. I have some feathers. I like these craft feathers. If you have something like this on hand, fantastic. If you don't have something like that on hand, it's no issue. A piece of tissue paper, bath tissue or otherwise, will work equally as well. So this is one thing I'd love for you to grab. And then some sort of scarf-like material. I have some early childhood scarves. You can get these Lakeshore Learning, Amazon, all sorts of places. And if you don't have something like this, a fashion scarf or otherwise, but just something that you can sort of flow with. Our plan today, and I'll reveal our objectives in a minute, though, includes some level of play. And we're going to use Fred, of course, as our inspiration. So a little bit more about me. I am the Senior Director of Education and Community Engagement at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum located in Nashville, Tennessee. Prior to my time in Nashville, I was with the Musical Instrument Museum, which is located in Phoenix, Arizona. And during the 2021 year, I served as the Gretsch Fellow of Children's Music at the Fred Rogers Institute. And so I spent a whole year immersed in all things Fred Rogers and was really looking at music making and listening and diversifying that. And what can we learn from Fred? Who of course has given us this great gift to carry on with his work, both through his Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but of course all of his writings and teachings and everything else. And so was greatly privileged. I've been in early childhood education about 15 years now. I have served as a music specialist that pushes into preschools. I've run my own music and movement for children and caregivers together. And so I really do come to this work with a deep love of early childhood and of Fred, and I'm just thrilled to be able to share it forward. My question for you, fist to 5 if you're on camera, and if you're not, that's okay. 0 to 5 if you're in the chat. How often do you use music in your teaching setting now? Just sort of want to get a sense of like where we are. Yeah, great. Thanks for those on camera participating. Love to see those. Great. Love it. Lots of engagement with music daily, 5s and 4s around. I love that. Okay, so really immersed in music. Perhaps that's what brought you to this this particular setting, this particular PD. Another question for you, fist to 5. Fist being never, 5 being always. How often are you using your singing voice when you're facilitating that music? Yeah, great. Lovely. Lots of really strong engagement. So 3s, 4s and 5s, a couple 2s and 3s. Great. If you find that you're sort of on the 3 and under range, just keep in mind that, you know, your voice is a practice. And I will say that young children, research shows, do not have a preference, do not indicate a preference for vocal quality and tone until much later. And so if what keeps you from singing is that you're afraid that you sound bad, I will tell you that the kids are not going to be particularly, they're not going to be turned off by it. So I encourage you to practice it and try it and grow your comfort with it. And that's the plan. Great. Our objectives today, we want to better understand Fred Rogers' relationship with and approach to music. I want to talk about musical play and help you to recognize the importance of musical play. And then I'm hoping that you can also identify ways that you can incorporate music into your early childhood setting. Last, and certainly not least, is we're going to spend some time playing together, hence the scarves and feathers. And I'm hoping that we'll spend about 20 minutes of our hour long together sort of immersed in practice, and you will get some pieces that you can carry forward, hopefully into the classroom, some tools and some resources for you. One more question for you in the chat function here, or you're always welcome to unmute. What what ages are you teaching? So are you teaching 3 to 5s primarily, 4s and 5s? Just sort of give me the great sense of what ages. Beautiful. Lots of preschool special needs. Beautiful. Pre-K 4s. Okay. 2 to 5s, sometimes 2s, 3 to 6. Lovely. I will try to scaffold some of this to say, hey, when we're in sort of late toddlerhood versus sort of that pre-K range, what are some differences between how I present things, and give you and model that for you in real time, just so that you have some idea about how diverse these activities can be for a scaffolded piece. As I go into any professional development, I like to sort of give a guiding question, and I like for you to think about what you want to take away from this particular professional development. A question that I regularly ask in early childhood spaces especially is, how do we recognize and honor the music in young children's lives? That is one of my guiding questions as I go through any PD. For you, what is it that you're hoping to get out of today's professional development? What is your question that you want to approach the work with? And of course, we're going to look at how Fred Rogers can help us. So you're welcome to unmute or throw it into the chat function for me. But tell me more about what question you have that has brought you to this PD particularly. Differentiation, great. We can talk about that. How to engage all students during music time, great. New ideas, best ways to engage, more ideas, kindness. Fred is great at that. Better use music in everyday lessons. Bring children into learning through music. Always looking for new songs to use with my students. Student engagement, appropriate behavior, new ideas and songs. Great. Lovely. Incorporating music into play, fun ideas and songs. Great. And of course, the tide of Fred. All right, this really helps to guide some of our conversation and where we can dig deeper. And I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing your feedback. Let's stop here and let's watch Fred. And I want you to just sort of like take notice of what comes to you in this. And give me 1 second, because of course I've got to go out of screen share and into screen share. And here we have Ella Jenkins on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Let me start at the beginning. Here we go.
And I remember when I was about 5 years old, we used to have recess, and in our schoolyard, some of the 6th and 7th, 8th graders were doing some pretty fancy rhythms. I forgot sometimes where my head was or my shoulders were, but we did something like this: head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Try it with me. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, head and shoulders, head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Now let's sing it. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2, 3. Head and shoulders, head and shoulders, head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2. Knees and ankles, baby, 1, 2, 3. Knees and ankles, baby, 1, 2, 3. Knees and ankles, knees and ankles, knees and ankles, baby, 1. Ankles and toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. Ankles and toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. Ankles and toes, ankles and toes, ankles and toes, baby, 1, 2, 3. And the way we used to end it was like this: that's all, baby, 1, 2, 3. That's all, baby, 1, 2, 3. That's all, that's all, that's all, baby, 1, 2, 3.
And that is all. It's time for us to get to the school to do our work with the children.
Fine. Good seeing you again.
Where are you going now?
We're going over to one of the schools and the neighborhood schools and share some of these rhythms with them.
Oh, so you teach in the schools too. Oh, thanks for coming.
Good seeing you again.
It's always great to be with you, Ella. Thank you, Chuck. Bye. All right. Head and shoulders, baby, 1, 2. This one down here was a real hard. Knees and ankles, baby one. I like to learn things, don't you? And there's so much in this world we can learn, no matter how young or how old we are.
And I remember when I
We'll pause it there. Out of screen share. What did you notice? You can put it in the chat function or you're welcome to unmute. What did you notice about that clip? So much laughter. Yes. Having fun with the movement. Everyone was engaged. Patterning, of course. Fred didn't follow the patterning all the way. Simple but effective. Catchy tune. Beautiful. Great. Rhythm and movement. Yeah. How many of you, by a show of hands, a thumbs up, or like a yes in the chat function, also noticed that Fred was not perfect? Yeah. So Fred sort of famously filmed this and really did not follow along as well as he probably would have hoped. And so they recorded it and then they watched it back and the producer said, okay, great, let's go again. Let's record it again. And Fred said, no, it's perfect just the way it is. And so just as Marcia has put into our chat function here, modeling risk-taking, approximation, showing up in the ways that he can, and that he loves to learn new things. And sometimes I think with music, this idea of doing something outside our comfort zone, so many of us may have done music as children in some capacity, but don't regularly sort of practice music as adults. Fred modeled for us all these different ways that we can take a playful and fun approach. So what I'd like to do next, and I'll throw the lyrics up here in a second, is I'd love for you, where you are, is to try something that you don't know yet. I mean, Head and Shoulders Baby 1, 2, 3 is sort of a take on Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. And that's what threw Fred, I think, was that it wasn't the song that he thought it was going to be. So I want to give you another style of that song. These are called circle songs or games that you can play with your kids. And this one's a big body movement. So I'm going to stand up and push back a little bit. And if you are at wherever you are, I would love for you to follow along at home, and then I'll show you the lyrics after we do that. The song goes like this: stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, jumping, 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 stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, jumping, 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 stand up, sit down, and walking, and walking, and walking, and walking, jumping, 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 stand up, sit down, and running, and running, and running, and running, jumping, 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 stand up, sit down. Beautiful. You've got it. We're going to do it one more time. Same movements, different words. Here we go. See mama ka, see mama ka, ruka, 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 see mama ka, see mama ka, see mama ka, ruka, 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 see mama ka, tembeya, 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 ruka, 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 see mama ka, kimbia, 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 ruka, 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 see mama ka. Yeah, you've got it. Let me throw up the lyrics for you. I saw a couple of you. This is also part of your workout hour as you end your day. Let's go back here. So we talked about what Fred modeled for us. And what we did here was something called Simama Ka. This song is actually from Tanzania, and the language that I was singing in is Swahili. But I started in English first and then transition it to Swahili. And circle songs and games are found all around the globe in children's cultures and are a great way to do big body movement. Fred modeled one example of that for us, and we just learned a whole nother example. So that's our little introduction portion, and I'd love to get into a little bit more specifically about Fred. You saw just a clip of him on on his show with Ella Jenkins. And I saw the nice comment that somebody said, "Oh, I use songs of Ella's all the time. My kids love her, and she really is classic and sort of timeless in the same way that I feel Fred is." But Fred had very specific ideas about music, and I want to draw your attention to two quotes. This panel is from the Fred Rogers Institute exhibit on Fred, and I want you to know that music was of great importance to Fred. He says, "It seems that music has always been at the root of who I am and what I do. Some people might be surprised to know that first and foremost, I consider myself a musician." Fred penned over 200 songs for the show and 13 half-hour long children's operas. If you've ever watched those, they're a wacky, wonderful ride, and I encourage you to check them out. But his music was so deeply embedded in the show, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But that's because he majored in music and was a composition major at Rollins College in Florida, and he himself was also a pianist. And so these things carried with him. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is his work with Johnny Costa, who is this gentleman sort of right underneath Fred in this bottom photo. Um, they said, "We both agree that music has to be of high quality. What we do isn't simple. Fred doesn't write simple tunes, and and jazz arrangements I do are very sophisticated. Fred always says if it's for the children, it has to be the best we can give." So let's recall, in what ways do you remember, if you watched it, how Fred used music on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? And what music do you remember most from that? Again, you're welcome to unmute or throw it in the chat function. The opera is good. Connie, I'm so glad you've seen those. Josephine the Short-Necked Giraffe is one of my favorites. The song at the beginning of the episode, good. Theme song, entrance song, intro, and end song. Yeah, good. So it's good to know he had the intro song. He also had the outro song, transitional music from activity to activity. Yes. Transition music into sort of imagination land. Great. Intro song. Does anybody remember the trolley sound? Ding, ding. And does anybody remember this sort of like jazz underscore that was always happening? I mean, Johnny Costa, if you are into jazz music, was a monster jazz musician. And so that underscore, while it was improvised, it really informed the way that the program moved along. Through my research, I sort of identified 4 areas that Fred modeled and used music in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and they're here. There's that musical soundscape. So if what you see, excuse me, if what you hear, yep, if what you see is a landscape, what you hear is a soundscape. So if what you see is a landscape, what you hear is a soundscape. And that jazz underscore and the sounds from the trolley really informed the musical soundscape of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He, of course, you've identified music for structure. It's the "Won't You Be My Neighbor" opening. It's such a good feeling closing. It's those moments of transition. There were also intentional musical experiences. How many of you remember a musician showing up like Yo-Yo Ma or Ella Jenkins or the Wynton Marsalis and his brothers? There were these, and it wasn't just music artists that appeared as guests, it was also just like creative individuals. And there's so much there that's sort of modeling, like, how do we have an intentional musical experience? And then, of course, Fred sang to us. And these were musical moments that featured his original music, which was great. I want to carry that idea forward, and I want to ask you, what music do you remember most from childhood? Folk music, nursery rhymes, Raffi, the Beach Boys, yeah. Theme songs from TV and shows, beautiful. Ella Jenkins, connections to books, Cinderella, soul music, TV theme songs. Italian music in my house, love that. Car radio, Big Bang music, jump rope songs. Yeah. So we have all of these styles of music. And I'll say my parents' music, good. I'm glad we brought that up. I'll say that how Fred modeled music on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is much how we experience music in in our lives. So these musical soundscapes, we also experience this. I mean, there are songs and things, excuse me. We're going the wrong way. You experience this when you are at a grocery store and there is commercial music being played in the background. I will say that I am now of the age where the grocery store is playing my jams. I didn't sign up for that music consumption, but it is a part of my experience in my day. And that music, I build relationships with that music. And you have demonstrated that in the chat function and the relationships you built, whether that's music that your family had playing or music of the radio or music of your childhood, but it becomes important to who you are in identity and also becomes important to the ways that you think. So what we present to children, you know, as background music is equally as important as these musical opportunities that we give them. Music for structure, I'm sure that you, growing up or in your teaching situations now, you're using music to mark the day and transition, help model self-regulation. How many of you, you're going to the gym, you're listening to one type of music, or you're getting ready to wind down for the evening, you're listening to another type of music. It really does help for those structure moments. You may attend concerts, or you may take music lessons or things like that. That's an intentional music experience. And then there's personal music making. And we all have various levels of comfort with that, but we're going to look at musicking. And I want us to think about music as a verb. Music as a verb, not just the product of music, but the process of music. And I would love to take credit for this beautiful idea of process-oriented music making. But Christopher Small coined this term in his 1988 text by the same name. He was a musician, educator, lecturer, and author. But he talked about how important the process of music is, musicking, versus this product that we have. And in early childhood, this is where we want to be situated, is in the process of how we're using music and how children are using music. And I would argue that when you have rich musical soundscapes, you have great music for structure, and you have intentional musical experiences, these three things that come together end up with really, really rich children's musicking. And I think Fred would be in alignment with that. Here's an example of what I say when I mean rich children's musicking. And just tell me what you notice. You can throw it in the chat function as we watch.
Yo. Yeah. Yo. Yeah. Yeah. We speak out the army, we don't speak what we do. I feel mommy, daddy, I feel it. I don't be happy. Mommy, happy, I'll be over here. I be happy. I'll be my people. Yeah. Just me, smooth flow, yo. I'm so rare. Are you with me? Got the world clear going. Are you with me? Oh, yeah. Who got the phone clear going? Oh, yeah. Yeah. One. Yo, 3. 4. Yeah, 5. 6. Yeah, 7. 9. Yeah, Daddy and Mommy. Daddy and Mommy. Kien. I'm Kien. Kien's rapping. Kien's rapping. Khalil's rapping. Khalil's rapping. And you rapping. Kahilo rapping. Say your name, Kahilo. Kahilo rapping. Yeah. Kahilo rapping.
I hope you enjoyed that clip as much as I do. I saw so many great comments come in the chat function. And this is what I mean in music gain. The process of what is happening is really evident in this child here. And I'm hoping that you saw emergent language skills developing. I hope that you notice the relationship between the father and son, the modeling that's taking place, the prosody as responding as if, call and response. All of this is really sort of a holistic thing. I'd also say, take note of this midline crossing on beat. I have grown adults that if I were to go dance with, can't do the two-step, right? And this child is really deeply enveloped. And this is the power of music, certainly, and what it can do for you. And so if we look closer at the archive from Fred, what Fred would tell us is that attitudes are caught, not taught. This is a Quaker saying, and it's one that he quoted very, very regularly. And it's one that I particularly love. Attitudes are caught, not taught. And when he talks about music, he is even more emphatic of this. So this is an email. He would edit the emails by hand. So it's really cool to go in and look at this archival information of printed email correspondence where he would go in and say, no, I want to change this word to this word, and I want to give more emphasis here. And so this revised version says, even if the only thing adults can play is the radio or CD, we can still give our children a smorgasbord of musical experiences just through our appreciation. As with most things, a love of music is caught much more than taught. So he adds that additional emphasis to say that, here is a place that we really should be modeling our appreciation. And when we look across the years, so this is from 2000, when we look across the years of that archival information, this is an article from 1985, so 40 years old now. But I will say that it was consistent with things he was saying in the early 2000s before he passed. Fred answered a series of questions, and really the question was around this idea of like, well, what's appropriate for children? And I think it's something we often think about. What's appropriate for children? Children are active participants in culture, period. And so they are hearing things that are on the radio. They're seeing things in front of them. We can't just silo them in children's music because that's not the reality of their world. They're active participants in culture. And Fred would tell us that the things that are appropriate are only those that address the human condition, everything in this world. He goes on to say there isn't adult music or children's music. There is only music. And one of the goals I have for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is to offer excellent music to children so that they can begin to see many of the ways there are to create and perform the sounds and rhythms we have come to call music. And I love this idea of the many ways there are to create and perform the sounds and rhythms, because that right there, the many ways all the way up to the rhythms, that to me is musicking. That's the process piece, right? Because he says that we have come to call music. So he's recognizing the significance and importance of process. All of this leads to some foundational ideas that are really evidenced in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and in Fred's work and writings. He would tell you music is for everyone and children are naturally musical. Music has meaning. It's about more than just one thing. Music making can help channel our feelings. If you think about some of the content of his songs, It's You I Like, they're really getting at social and emotional learning. In music listening, artistry matters. The quality of what we're playing matters. Musical interaction should be deep and simple. They don't have to be complicated. And musical sounds can be found everywhere. So when we pair these foundational ideas with the ways of use that I previously presented, so those musical soundscapes, music for structure, intentional musical experiences, and personal music making, what I'm really looking at as a researcher, and of course in today's hour we have together, is like this idea that like it's about more than one thing. Like, don't think about music as just this moment of like, oh, we're gonna do music because music's good for us. It's so much bigger than that. And then musical interaction should be deep and simple. It doesn't have to be all 10 verses of a song to be successful. And I want to model some music for you today that I'm going to show you how you can do high levels of repetition, but you can still keep it simple enough that it's digestible for yourself and the kids. And we're specifically talking about intentional musical experiences. We're going to talk about musical play as we get into this next section here. Do you have any questions thus far? Great. If you do, you're welcome to put them in the chat function. I love seeing these musical stories that are emerging. So I want to give you just a brief introduction to musical play. And to get there, I just want to remind you that there are theories of play, whether that's our constructivist approaches to play, Piaget, Vygotsky, or our Mildred Parton stages of play. But these ideas about the importance of play have been around for over 100 years. We have research that indicates that children learn and grow through play. Fred would tell us that play is often talked about as if it were relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. Jumping ahead, in fact, play is the real work of childhood. And so we're going to grow and build on these theories and these ideas, in particular, the zone of proximal development. Vygotsky would say there are things that we can do and that children can do, and then there are things that they cannot yet do. And in order to get from what you can do to what you cannot yet do, you've got to move through this zone of proximal development. And he would argue that children play there. And so I'm going to try to sort of push us into our zone of proximal development to grow and to learn together through play. And we're going to do that through something I call facilitated musical play. And for me, when we talk about musical play, it's sort of 6 things. Like you really have to have these 6 hallmarks in order to make sure that it is appropriate and that it follows the children. And so, 6 things to me. 1 is child-centered. I develop a lesson plan before I teach, but I think about my lesson plan as a menu. And so I may go from this to, the first one to the 10th one to the 8th one. And that's because I want to follow the kids when they come in the room. A good example of that are these hoops here. I had a student named Alex. Alex was 4 years old, would come with mom, came with dad one week, showed up 20 minutes early, long time for a 4-year-old to wait. So dad took him across the way to the cafe to get a Sprite. And so before Alex started class, he had 20 ounces of carbonated sugar water. And Alex is already a kid that self-regulates through movement and has to move. And so Alex is running circles around me. And if you are not going to hurt yourself, you're not going to hurt somebody else, and the activity can still go on, you are welcome to self-regulate however you need in my classroom space. And so all of those things were fine. I was not going to stop Alex, but I asked him and I said, Alex, what are you doing? How should we sing hello to you? And he said, well, I'm a motorboat. So we all sang hello as if we were motorboats. And my next activity would have been a finger play. But that's not what Alex was demonstrating and what the other children were showing me. So rather, we passed out hoops. I said, great, your hoop is a motorboat. What's on your motorboat? We have dinosaurs and stars. You tell me what you have. And then I say, oh, bad news. Your boat's lost their motors. We have to row to shore. Right? You all know songs about boats. And so we use Alex's idea to get us into a movement activity using row, row, row your boat, right? That's how we follow the children through their play. The other thing is that you have to have some enthusiasm. And so I want you to show me your 10 wiggly fingers, if you will. 10 wiggly fingers wiggle side to side, 10 wiggly fingers going for a ride, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle up and down, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle right on down to town, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle round and round, 10 wiggly fingers don't make a single sound, 10 wiggly fingers playing hide and seek. Oh, they're gone. Don't peek. Show me your fingers one more time. 10 wiggly fingers wiggle from side to side, 10 wiggly fingers going for a ride, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle up and down, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle right on down to town, 10 wiggly fingers wiggle round and round, 10 wiggly fingers don't make a single sound, 10 wiggly fingers playing hide and seek. Now they're gone. Don't peek. Which one did you prefer, the first time or the second time? I think many of you are going to say the second time, and that has to do with some of the enthusiasm, but we can quantify and qualify that enthusiasm. The pacing was different, the intonation was different, the dynamics were different, loud and soft. And so all of these things come together as a way to present enthusiastically, which matters because as Fred told us, attitudes are caught, not taught, right? So I'm going to model that enthusiasm. Concise instructions are important. How you present materials become very important. Children, of course, at this age are very literal, and so making sure you're giving them short, sequential instructions, that's going to give us the most bang for our buck. Activities have to be modified for age and stage. I'll sort of say, here's how I do this activity for toddlers, and then how I do it for pre-K, and here's how I do it for kinders, that sort of thing. But just know that these activities can be used in a variety of ways. It should be ongoing. It's great to have that sort of dedicated music time, once a week, twice a week, daily. But it's also good if you can carry some of these musical moments throughout the day, especially in the way of soundscapes, that music you're playing in the background. And so just keep that in mind as, how does that music that you're playing in the background then inform your musical play? And last but not least, it should be fun, and I hope that you enjoy it. I saw some beautiful stories in our chat of how people made music growing up. And sometimes, you start with music in childhood, and then by the time you get to an adult, you no longer practice. And I think a lot of that is because it loses its fun. And so how do we keep it fun, both for you as the facilitator and for the kids? A short story, when I was little, I had a music teacher. I was 5, and my music teacher, Mrs. Jessup, by my estimation, was 80 million years old. And by week 5, I crawled under the piano because A, it wasn't fun, but B, it wasn't child-centered. She didn't follow me. She didn't have any ounce of enthusiasm. She didn't give me concise instructions about why were we repeating things, or, hey, Katie, let's work on our thumb this time. She didn't modify it for age and stage for me as a 5-year-old. And so had she done these things, we really could have stayed working together, and I would have stayed engaged as a young piano student. So just an example. I'm sort of on this soapbox because what I want you to know is that facilitated musical play is really great for kids. It really is a holistic approach. It helps with our pre-language and our language development. Our young rapper from that video we just watched, I hope you saw the rhyming schemes that were beginning to come out and the patterning that was emerging. That is all going to lead to later academic success. And so these cognitive abilities really do start to come to the forefront. Social emotional skills, of course, music helps with that. Also, physical abilities. We'll do another big body movement here with our feathers in a minute. And then, of course, prepares children to enter school and you reach musical milestones. But as a musician myself and as a music educator and an early childhood educator, number 5 is the least of my concerns. I'm really interested in the holistic side of music development. Many people are very interested in the language and musical development and how they mirror. And what I will say is that if this is something that interests you, the scholar that you should sort of look towards is Edwin Gordon, and I will put that name in the chat function. And he does something called music learning theory. And it really shows that, when we're in the womb, we're listening. The next thing that happens is that we begin to vocalize and babble and sing and chant. And then eventually we get to this place of audiation. And that's hearing pitches before you can sing them. And that's where I know that we're really unlocking all of that language ability, because that leads to syntax and that leads to understanding sentence structure and putting ideas together in sensical ways as defined by community. And so I like to give you just a taste of that, but please know that research is rich and developed, and that there are others that are doing some really great work in that arena. All right, so that takes us to our final 20 minutes. Before we advance, are there any questions sort of about this like Fred Rogers approach and how it aligns with the idea of musical play before we do some playing ourselves? And I'll pause here so the chat, if you have it, or you can always unmute. Great. I'll keep my eye on the chat should anything arise, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and get out that tissue paper and or feather, depending on what you have. Change my screen so I can see myself so I know that my feather's in place. So I have a feather. I'd love for you to take that feather and tickle your face. Beautiful. Put that feather or your piece of paper high in the air. Great. When you touch your feather or your tissue paper, is it soft or is it rough? Many of you are thinking it's soft. Beautiful. When you put your feather high in the air, is it heavy or is it light? It's very light. Great. We're going to let our feather fall to the ground. Here we go. Down, 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 feathers falling to the ground. Great. Try it again. Down, 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 feathers falling to the ground. One more time. Down, 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 feathers falling to the ground. If you're a musician, I'm singing a major scale descending. If you're not a musician, this is high, this is low, and I'm getting in between the two. I'm building spatial awareness. This is high, this is low, with vocal awareness and tonal awareness. So this time, letting the feathers fall to the ground, that's what I would do with my toddlers the very first time that we did this activity. As they grow and they gain more coordination and they're able to release the feather each time, this time you are 2.5 and older, I'm going to say you're going to catch your feather. Here we go. Put it high in the air and catch it as it falls. Down, 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 feathers falling to your hand. Let's try again. Down, 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 feathers falling to your hand. Last time. Down, 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 feathers falling to your hand. None of you have done the early childhood thing, which is to go off mute and tell me, oh my gosh, I couldn't catch my feather. I'm so upset. None of you are visibly crying in the fields that I can see, right? None of you have jumped up and said, I catched it, right? So doing it multiple times is really important because we want to have multiple opportunities for success. So I modeled for you 3 times, but I really encourage you to do it at least 4 times. So let's do it one last time. Down, 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 feathers falling to your hand. Yes, some great catches here. Depending on what your teaching environment is like, whether you're in a big group or a small group, what your COVID policies are, another great thing is to do that and then say, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, blow and catch. COVID really killed my ability to blow feathers inside big classrooms. But if you're working virtually, certainly, but we're adding an element of breath control in to that process, and we're giving our brain an opportunity to think of what the next pitch is. So bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, blow and catch. Last time, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, blow and catch. I got caught on my light. And I'm singing a 5-1 if you're a musician. If not, I'm creating a pattern, a tonal pattern that becomes an auditory cue for the students to jump in with me. So we've done just our introduction to feathers. We've done high, we've done low, we've done let's catch our feather. Now we're going to stay seated because we're toddlers. And we are going to take our feather and we are going to balance it on the back of our hand. And we're just going to sway side to side. Oh, wasana sana, oh, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana, oh, wasana sa. If you have the ability to blow and catch, now would be the time to do it. Bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum. Blow and catch. If you don't have the ability to blow and catch, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum. Catch your feather. Yes. And so now we're going to put it in our other hand. That time we swayed side to side. This time, let's rock back and forward. Oh, wasana sana, no, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana, no, wasana sa. Bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum. Switch hands. There you go. You're gonna take your feather, put it in both hands. Let's do a big circle with our bodies. Oh, wasana sana, no, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana, no, wasana sa. Bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum. You've got it. So I would stay seated with my toddlers, but then as we gain more comfort with the feather, we're going to stand up and we're going to do some movement with our feather. And same activity, same song, same melody. I'm going to take my feather, I'm going to put it on the back of my hand, and I give instruction. I say, you may move anywhere you like in the room with your feather. I just ask that you watch out for your friends, but you have to move so slow so your feather does not fall off. Here we go. Oh, wasana sana no, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana no, wasana sa. Depending on the age and how active they are, then we'll say, rather than move anywhere you like, I'll give another prompt. This time, move backwards. Oh, wasana sana no, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana no, wasana sa. Move forwards on your tiptoes. Oh, wasana sana no, wasana sa. Oh, wasana sana no, oh, wasana sa. Bum ba da dum bum bum. Catch your feather, right? It also becomes an opportunity for to place it on different body parts. So we started with our hands. I can go to my head, can go to my shoulder, I can go to my nose, right? All of these different ways that we can move. As they get older, I put a rule around it. I say, if you drop your feather, then you have to freeze until somebody picks it up. So that's my, games with rules, emerging kinders, mixed classrooms in Montessori on the older end, that sort of thing. The feathers, also an opportunity for the children to give ideas. Sally, where should we put our feather next and how should we move? Brian, where should we put our feather next and how should we move? So giving them opportunity to take ownership of the activity and to co-construct the activity. A little bit about Obosana Sa. This is a rock passing game from West Africa. The exact translation has been lost. However, Obosana Sa is one part, and then Nana they think is a name. And so it's sort of like pass the rock, Namna, pass the rock, Nana, pass the rock. I use this melody in all different ways. But what I like about this melody, and if you read music, here's the music. If you don't read music, it just goes up, down, it goes up, and you've got my vocal example that you can follow, is that it is short. It is simple. And so when we talked about, deep and simple, this is an example of how you go deep and simple. Very short, repetitive melody. You're doing it multiple times, and you're finding ways to change the variation through the manipulative or the feather itself. Fist to 5. Fist being, I could never do this activity. 5, I can certainly do an adaptation of this activity in the classroom. Show me where you're at. 0 to 5 on the scale. Yeah, great. Lovely. Love to see those 5s. Obasana, the translation has been lost, so I can't tell you exactly, but the estimation is pass the rock. So, and then Nana is a name. So pass the rock, Nana, pass the rock, Nana, pass the rock. But that is an approximation and that is a guess. If the language is a barrier, you could also just sing the melody. I will tell you, I have used feathers in early childhood settings, really all over, from Malaysia to Tanzania to the United States. And I will say feathers are a hit. Kids love feathers, and I do it in PDs. Adults love feathers too. So it turns out we all enjoy feathers. So let's put our feather away and let's turn to our scarves. I like to do 2 scarves. I like to have one in each hand. It's good for our bilateral development. And before we get into sort of the math side of this, I want to use a melody that you may be familiar with. If you've ever heard any Korean or had any influence from Korea, it's a really popular Korean melody. Full disclosure, my Korean, not great. But you don't have to use the words. Gordon, the person who did the music and language development triangle I showed you, Gordon would tell us that actually songs without words are more impactful because you're helping to build the musical melodies in the brain, and that is what's going to create to greater language development later on, and that the words just sort of get in the way and muddy it up. So take that with what you will. But the first thing we want to do with our scarves is we want to flow. So find something that you can flow with, or you can pretend you have scarves any way you like. Here we go. In the air. Same idea as the blow and catch. I go scrunch, 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 bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, throw and catch. I'm giving them that auditory cue, helping to build out our syntax. And I'm just asking them to move in any way that they like. The research shows that children that can keep a steady beat, so your ability to go out on the 4th of July and go bum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum ba-dum, right in time, clap right in time. That's your ability to keep a steady beat. That ability shows greater math skills later on, and it also shows greater academic performance in language later on. So whatever we can do to foster steady beat keeping in the early years is advantageous for our cognitive development. Now, here's the trick. Fostering steady beat keeping, right, does not mean just putting music on and doing bum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum 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 bum. Fostering steady beat keeping means giving children a chance to flow and to move. And Cynthia Taggart, emeritus of Michigan State University in early childhood education, would say that it is to feel the space in between the beats. That how could you feel the beat, steady beat, if you have not flowed through the space in between the beats? So all of that to say, letting children move any direction or ways that they like as they learn about their body in space and time, that's what helps us lead to steady beat keeping later on. And really, you can use any melody. I love diversifying the music that we listen to because we build relationships with the music that we listen to. So more songs from Africa, more songs from Asia, more songs from Europe just helps to diversify that repertoire. And, in my hypothesis, it leads to greater cultural awareness and empathy. That's where I come from. But you can use any melody that you like, something like up high, down low, right? Anything that you want to move to works. Just know you're trying to get the kids to flow. Another great activity, sort of this idea of like a narrative play, and we're going to come back to that idea of math in a second, are taking songs you already know, The Wheels on the Bus, and putting them with scarves, but you can diversify it as you do it. So the wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all through the town. I went forwards because I'm on camera. I normally do this. It didn't go great going forwards. Take with that what you will. Go this way. I built this out and I have the children contribute. So what else happens on my bus? I ask. I say, oh, well, the wipers. The wipers on the bus go swish, 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 swish. The wipers on the bus go swish, 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 all through the town. What else happens? The doors on the bus go open and shut, open and shut, open and shut. What else happens on the bus? The horn on the bus goes beep, beep, beep. So once we're in a place where the children are giving me ideas, either verbal ideas or nonverbal ideas, depending on the age, that's when I begin to change the narrative. So we're taking a song that we know, and then we are co-constructing the narrative as they know it. And then I'm going to say, I have a kitty on my bus. The kitties on the bus go meow, 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 meow. Kitties on the bus go meow, 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 all through the town, right? And then I'm going to start to ask about what other animals we have on our bus. And the students are going to contribute ideas, and I'm going to say, great, what does that animal do or say? So we get things like the dog, and the dog says woof. The dog on the bus goes woof, woof, woof. Woof, 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 woof. Or the cat on the bus goes, cat on the bus goes purr, purr, purr. Or the tiger on the bus goes roar, 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 roar. So we're using things that they already know. Inevitably, what happens is that there is an animal that the children know and love, and in some instances have researched deeply. But you can't come up with what they say or do, and they can't come up with what they say or do. And I believe that early childhood education is an exercise in improvisation. And so we say, yes, and. So my friend Sebastian, who was 5 at the time, said, I have a sea cucumber on the bus. And I was like, great. Sebastian, what does that sea cucumber say or do? And he looked at me and I looked at him and neither one of us could come up with anything. And so I said, yes, and I said, the sea cucumber on the bus goes squirt, 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 squirt. And had there been another opportunity, he would have corrected me if he had known. But it's all about embracing what the children are presenting. And so finding moments to be playful and to lean into that playfulness are important. There is a great book that you could use if you're interested in diversifying your music making and listening. And this is called Wheels on the Tuk-Tuk. And so you could start with Wheels on the Bus, then go into Wheels on the Tuk-Tuk. A tuk-tuk is a 3-wheeled vehicle, much like a bus from India. And it's in other parts of the world too. But you can sing this song, it's to the same melody. Tuk tuk wheels go round and round, round and round, round and round. The tuk tuk wheels go round and round all through the town. The people on the street jump on and off, on and off, on and off. The tuk tuk Wallaces squishing together, squishing together, squishing together. The tuk tuk stops for moo moo cow, moo moo cow, moo moo cow. The tuk tuk riders eat papa-dappa-dums, 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 right? And a whole opportunity to build out new language and new ideas. And so this text, I believe, is being raffled away today as a part of the webinar, but lots of great illustrations. And then I'll just leave this part and say it doesn't have to always be a bus, right? We can present other ideas. The police car goes fast, 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 or the taxi driver goes backwards, you know, all sorts of ideas, and let the children take ownership of that. We have time for just one more. And so I'd like for you to imagine putting your scarf out in front of you. This is our math component. When I put my scarf out in front of me, I have the shape of a square. Now I do this with my older kids. So I do it with like 4s and 5s, sometimes 3s, depending on fine motor. And I want you to take your bottom 2 corners and fold them up. What's your new shape? My new shape is a rectangle. Take your side 2 corners, fold them over. My new shape is a square. Look at us scaffolding on ideas and concepts that we know and are studying. Take your top corner and fold it across diagonally to your bottom corner. Look at my new shape. I have a triangle. I'm going to fold it in half one more time just because of the size of my triangle. Now I'm going to say that my triangle is a little baby hippopotamus. My hippopotamus's name is Fritz, and Fritz the hippopotamus likes to eat blueberries and pizza. I'd encourage the children to give me some symbolic play and tell me what their scarf and animal represent. And then we're going to take it, we're going to put it on our head, and we're going to rock it side to side. This song Fred wrote with his son when his son was 5, I believe. Very, very simple, deep and simple. Tree, 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 tree. We love you, yes we do. We love you, yes we do. Tree, 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 tree. Take it, put it over your shoulder. Doesn't have to be about trees. Hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. We love you, yes we do. We love you, yes we do. And we can sing about all of the animals that the students have and that the students are holding. But there's just tons of opportunity to engage in some symbolic play with the kiddos on this example. Oh, 1 second. Beautiful. All right. Okay. We no longer have raffles. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wheels on the Tuk-Tuk, available on Amazon, price is right on it, and it's a great way to sort of build out vocabulary and cultural awareness and empathy. All right, fist to 5, this is the last thing. Fist, I can use none of these activities. 5, I'm taking away things that I can put into practice this week, or next week, or applications. Love it. Great. If you have questions, throw them into that chat function. I believe you all already have the QR code. I'm going to put my email in the chat function as well. Should anything arise, you're like, hey, I loved that activity, but I can't remember the melody, just email me. I'll send you a voice memo. I'm happy to do that. But I wish you all the best in your music making, and I really hope that Fred helps guide you, because I know no better neighbor and no better guide than Fred Rogers.